Alrighty then. Hello, Slot Car Gang. We have a what do we have? An exclusive?
Yes.
Exclusive. That sounds pretty exclusive.
It is.
All right. So we have a film that's been put in storage for over 5 months.
Today.
To the day, and we are now going to release it to the daylight. It's been vampiring away. Okay, so the first bit will be a technique shown, won't it?
Yes.
Basically.
The technique of
this person that we met
racing.
at the slot shop at the Slot Nationals. And we got to talking, and we both had the same vibe.
Yeah.
We just clicked.
We clicked.
We clicked.
Very well.
So he
very graciously offered to come over to Wols's house to come and do an interview with us.
So yes, how special is that? So
yes.
After some tea and bickies, we got to talking about lots of things.
Yes. This video will be a two-parter because it's just too long to have.
Because we had lots to talk about.
Yes, we did. Very interesting stuff.
It is very interesting stuff. Fancy interesting stuff coming from us.
Yeah, I know.
Heaven forbid, what's it going on? Anyway, we'll leave it at that, and
we hope you enjoy it.
We hope you enjoy it.
Bye.
Right, behind the green line and behind the back. Good luck, gentlemen.
And Marshall.
Yep. Whenever you're ready.
3, 2, 1, go!
You want tomorrow?
Yeah,
Can't leave it in the white.
Halfway through the heat.
Welcome, Ian.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite.
Now we we have a very special guest.
Yes.
Who was we just came from the nationals at the slot shop at the
Yes.
the slotted.
At Electric Dream. Oh,
No,
sorry,
no. At the,
My apologies.
Well, both actually, yeah.
Yes.
well, we'll get into that one.
Nationals in
Earlier.
Nationals in.
So, you are UK born, is that right?
Yes. So born in the UK back in a long time. I'm not going to say how long ago because it was a very long time ago, but in the south of England, about 30 kilometres north of Southampton. So
right.
It's a country area. So I'm a country boy at heart. I had a lovely upbringing. I was very, very lucky where I was born and brought up, and with the parents that I had. They were awesome. Yes, so educated over there. Went to school, grew up, got my first slot car set. While I was over there, when I was living there,
That would have been a Scalextric set?
It was a Scalextric set, and it was quite a nice set actually at the time. I remember it had two cars. One was the very iconic Ronnie Peterson Lotus 72 in JPS colours. That's the car that really got me interested in motorsport from when I was a kid. That Lotus 72 in the JPS colours, it was surreal how what an impact that car had on me, and I guess for a lot of people as well. And the March, I think it was the 701 or the 721, I can't remember the exact number now, but it was red, and it was famous for having the T-tray front nose. And again, oddly enough, that was a Ronnie Peterson car. Ronnie Peterson drove that car, but also Nicky Lauda drove that car as well. One of his first ever Formula One drives, I think, was in that car. Okay, and so yeah, that March, and I see that you've dug it out for here.
Yes,
so
I have.
I think the version I had might have been a later version than that, but that is the very car, exactly that one. So yes, so that was a set that my dad bought for myself and my brother when we were kids. My brother was 5 years younger than me, and so I wanted to drive the Lotus, and so he had the March, and he wanted to drive the Lotus, and I didn't want to drive the March. So my dad took me to one side and gave me a little bit of a talk to, and said, wouldn't it be nice if you let your brother drive the Lotus? And I said, oh yeah, but it's slower, Dad. It's not a good car. It's slower. So my dad, who was one step ahead of me again, said, well, why don't you take all the bits that are fast out of the March, and why don't you put them in the Lotus, and why don't you let your brother drive the Lotus, because he is after all 5 years younger than you, Ian. An incredibly valuable learning experience,
Diplomacy.
Yeah, and it's not just about you, it's about the bigger picture. So I learned a big lesson at that time. My dad was quite right in what he was saying. So yeah, I did exactly that, and it got me interested in mechanicals. So I took all the bits out of the March and I put them into the Lotus, and vice versa. And I ran the slower March, and my brother ran the faster Lotus, and I had 5 years on him, and we were pretty evenly matched. On reflection, I feel better about that. So yeah, that was my first foray into slot cars, and went to school with a couple of mates who also were heavily into slot cars. I didn't know, but we just happened to get talking, and we found by accident that we had this common interest. So we suddenly went bonkers, and we started organising race meetings and things. So we would rotate, the three of us, we would rotate. So we'd go, every 2 weeks we'd go to each other's houses. And, I would set up a track on the floor of my bedroom. I'd put the bed up against the wall. I'd move the furniture out to the outsides. Yes. And if I was, at my place, I would probably set up, a Silverstone or a Brands Hatch, or Austria was one of my favourite tracks at the time. And they would do the same when we went to theirs, and we maintained a points table, and we built our own cars. We scratch built our own cars. So we would have been about 14, 15, and we were scratch building our own cars.
From brass?
No. It was probably, at that stage, it was plastic card. So I can't remember the name of the plastic. It's styrene, isn't it? So styrene plastic, and balsa wood.
Balsa wood?
Yeah, so you form the shapes that you want for the body out of balsa wood, sand it down, seal it, sand it, paint it. I'm not saying they were fantastic, but we got a lot of satisfaction from building our own cars. And at that stage, Scalextric didn't have a tremendous range, so if you wanted the Project 34 Tyrrell, the six-wheel Tyrrell, you had to make it yourself. And so that's what I did. I made a Project 34 Tyrrell to race. The Lotus 79, nobody did it. Polysteel were a manufacturer of the time. SCX, I can't remember, I don't know if they existed. Scalextric definitely didn't make it then. They do now, but they didn't then. I loved that Mario Andretti Lotus 79 from 1978, the first true ground effect car. But nobody made it, so I had to scratch build my own. So that's what I did. So yeah, we ran those race series, and then got into further education, and the slot cars fell away. And I didn't revisit them again until 2009, 2010. So
It's a long hiatus.
it is. It certainly is. I think I bought one slot car in the intervening period because I visited a die-cast shop, and there was a Fly Porsche, one of the Porsches that raced at Le Mans, and it was done in a chrome finish. It was one of the Fly Chrome cars, beautiful looking car, and I couldn't resist it, and I just bought it. But I bought it not for the reasons of running it, because I just thought it looked like an amazing model. And this was at the time when Fly were beginning to produce cars, slot cars that looked like die-cast cars. The finish was so good on them that they looked that good. So, but that would have been 2003 when I bought that, around about that time. So yeah, slot cars took a back seat for a long time. You know, a career, you know, relationships, you know, they take over, and the slot cars fell away until about 2009-10. Yeah.
And what stirred the pot of slot car again?
Well, I've always been interested in motorsport. You know, when I was young, as I mentioned earlier, that Lotus 72, the Emerson Fittipaldi Lotus 72, it just blew me away when I saw it on the television. You know, there was this thing with wings and wide tyres and this amazing sound and
a cool looking colour.
Oh,
black with the gold.
The paint scheme, you know, Colin Chapman did an amazing job with that paint scheme, didn't he? Yeah, superb car that really captured your interest. And then at the same time, so that would have been 1972, around about the same time, you know, Porsche were running the 917 in the Le Mans category and the sports car categories, prototypes, what have you. And what a car, again, what a car to capture your imagination. And alongside that, you had the Lola T70s and the Ferrari 512s, the most beautiful cars that you could possibly wish to see, with, you know, wonderful engines and doing 230 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. You know,
and the sound. The sound.
Yeah. And when you're that old,
Thunder.
you know, it captures your imagination. You know, you know what it's like to do 70 miles an hour in your dad's Cortina on the motorway, and you think to yourself, 230 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight in something that weighed like 550 kilos or whatever, you know. And then, of course, you know, there were other motoring influences. Sorry, I should have mentioned Can-Am as well. Obviously, you know, you had
The American Can-Am.
yeah, you know, you have these 7-litre V8 monsters, and the Porsche, the 917 that was converted to Can-Am spec with Mark Donoghue, that, you know, 1200 horsepower. There was a story about him where he was asking him, Mark, do you have enough power? You know, you've got enough power in the car? And his answer was, I'm paraphrasing here, but his answer was something along the lines of, look, I can spin up the wheels when I'm coming out of a corner. I can spin up the rear wheels. And I think if you're still spinning the rear wheels when it comes to the time to brake for the next corner, I think you've got enough power. So,
just a tad.
yeah. So again, you know, what that does to your imagination. You think, what must it be like to drive a car with 1200 horsepower? I'm trying to think of the other races. And on the domestic side, you had the European Formula 2 series. Now, I was born about 5 miles away from Thruxton Motor Racing Circuit in the UK, which is an airfield circuit similar to Silverstone. So the circuit runs around the perimeter road of an airfield, and it hosted Formula 2, European Formula 2, which was immensely competitive back then. It hosted the Aurora AFX Formula 1 series, which was a series that was put together for old and retired Formula 1 cars. But some of the cars you had in that series were very competitive cars. You had the Williams FW07, which was the car that Alan Jones won his first championship in back in the 80s. You had the Lotus 78, the forerunner to the Lotus 79 I mentioned earlier. You had the Williams FW05, 06. You had those as well, and the Arrows A3. So some very competitive machinery. And they ran at Thruxton, so I'd be out there at weekends, you know, spectating, trying to learn whatever I could. So the interest was always there, always there. And I've followed Formula 1 since about 1975, which is when Niki Lauda started to drive for Ferrari. And I was a big Lauda fan back then. So I've always followed Formula 1, and I've always wondered, well, how can I get a little bit more involved rather than just being an armchair enthusiast who watches from the sidelines and reads it in Autosport magazine or whatever. How can I be closer to motorsport?
Perhaps get a little bit of a taste or a sniff of something. Yeah.
How can I get into competition and stuff? And for me, there was no way to do that with a race team or anything like that. I never looked into it hard enough. But I remember back to my childhood, and I just thought, well, slot cars were awesome. I remember, and you've got control over everything. You build the car, you race the car. It's down to you. So I just did some searching on Google. I was living in Sydney by this time in 2009, and I did some Googling on the web, and I came up with Armchair, and they just happened to be 2 kilometres up the road from where I was living.
Wow.
So I joined their Wednesday night race series and did that for a long time. Met a whole bunch of friends who I'm still friends with today, and we've enjoyed many evenings of racing together. Armchair would run 5 or 6 categories of races, so you would build 5 or 6 different cars for those categories and race them on a Wednesday night. And on Thursday evening, you'd be sat there eating your dinner, repairing your car with the damage that had been done the previous night, sort of thing. So hopefully you got a win, or you got a podium, or a result you could be proud of, or you come away disappointed, or whatever. So and then that led on to other locations.
Okay, and away we go.
So racing. I started at Harman in Armchair Racer, and they had a couple of really good tracks. So I did a lot of learning in terms of racing. I did a lot of learning there, and then I expanded a bit more to do other types of other racing at other locations as well. So Hornsby was a very famous track in Sydney. Fantastic track. Fantastic couple of tracks actually. One of the tracks was used for wing cars, which I've never got into. Way too much for me. You need the reflexes of a cat, I think, to drive those things, and that's not me. So,
and visually,
yeah, you get a sore neck watching those things. So, but very impressive, but not for me. But the other track they had was used for all sorts of national competitions, Australian national competitions. It was very, very good track, very challenging, very well maintained. A good layout, very enjoyable racing. And then there was another track at Pendle Hill for a short while, and the guy there had a couple of tracks built, one of which was a very large track, and I really loved that track. It was very challenging, very enjoyable to drive. It was in an industrial unit in Pendle Hill, and we'd go there every week, and we'd run Scalextric cars, or we'd run slotted cars and NSR cars, all 1/32 scale, I should say. And really. Was
that a timber?
Yes, it was. Yes, wasn't built the same way as a lot of other timber tracks are built. A lot of other timber tracks are built using plywood or MDF.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually built using the melamine coated board that you build kitchen units out of.
Yeah.
So you're actually racing on that surface. Not a bad surface actually, quite smooth, easy to work with, easy to clean. So actually not a bad surface, not a traditional surface, and so it didn't gain a lot of acceptance from everybody. But actually,
so was that braid or tape?
No, very much braid. Yeah. Yes, yeah. The guy who built it did a proper routing job with a router and put the recess in for the braid.
Mm-hmm.
And glued the braid in, and it was a proper job. Good track, but that track, and he had 3 tracks, and I think 2 of those tracks have now found themselves further up the coast in New South Wales, at Lemon Tree Passage, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Chassis slots.
Yes.
Chassis slots, yes.
And those so the tracks are fine. They're good. Good tracks, quite well built, still giving good service. So and people are enjoying them, which is great. It's absolutely great. That's how it should be.
That's interesting to know that they were from Pendle Hill. That's
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
and they're still surviving. They're still being used.
Yeah.
For international thing, because they had the NSRs up there.
Yes, I think so.
Nationals.
Right. So
recently.
they've given a lot of good service, those tracks. And you walk in and they're white. The surface is white. except for where they rub it in and you get the slick marks and what have you. Yes, and then there's Penrith in the Sydney area as well. There's not a lot of organised racing goes on there, unfortunately, which is a real shame. It would be good if there was more. But we've been very unlucky in Sydney. We have Slot Shop, which is a fantastic facility. Good racing, great shop environment. The owners are really
family owned.
Yeah, and they're so supportive of the slot car community. They're Eddie and Maria. They're brilliant. And you've then got the unfortunate situation where we've lost a lot of tracks in Sydney, in the Sydney metro area. So Pendle Hill has gone up the coast, as I mentioned. Hornsby shut down because the landlord wanted to redevelop the land that the shop was sat on. And Armchair, they needed to change the shape of their business, and so they got rid of their tracks. So they're still very much in operation and still do lots of supply lots of slot cars and spares and stuff, but they don't have the tracks anymore. So from a racer's perspective, Sydney has actually gone backwards quite significantly. So that's why we're so grateful to Eddie and Maria for the slot shop environment. And they do kids parties to try and get the youngsters interested and involved and what have you. And the racers get to race there 2-3 times a week if they want to.
And that's where you have the camaraderie and all that. You get the competitiveness, you get the old school.
Yeah.
And away from TV, and get out there and socialise and look, that's one of my key takeaways for slot car racing. People do slot car racing for different reasons. Either they want to drive the car that they drove when they were a kid, or they saw on the TV when they were a kid, or it may be that they like making their own cars and they just want to drive them around because they made that car, or they like the cut and thrust of competition, or they just like the social side of it, and there happens to be some slot car racing on the side. And there's any number of reasons why people go slot car racing. For me, it's like all of the above. I like all of those aspects of it. I like building my own cars. I like painting my own cars. I like racing cars. I like when I was a kid. I do like the competition. I need an outlet for my competitive spirit, and that gives me the outlet for it. In a controlled, measured, environment, which is a good thing. But every time I go racing with the guys, we also go to lunch together. Yeah.
And it's really nice to spend time with like-minded friends who we talk a lot of rubbish about real racing, about road cars, about lots of things that we can't afford, and about slot cars as well. The latest release from Scale Auto or from NSR or from Slothill or Scalestric, whoever. So yeah, it's a nice way to spend time. And one of the things that I really like about what I'm seeing with slot cars is when you see a father and a son, or a father and a daughter, or whatever, and they've both got a couple of cars, and they've come along for a Sunday drive or whatever on the weekend, and they're there driving their cars together, and they're doing laps together and having a little bit of a race together. And okay, it's slot car racing or whatever you want to call it, but you can actually see the connection, and you can see them bonding and talking about stuff that they might not otherwise talk about. And I find that really super. It doesn't matter if that kid is going to then go on and do more slot car racing later. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is that they're bonding with their parent.
They're exposed to this, and they can decide whatever they later on. But yes, it's exposure that's needed. Which, like you said, there are a lot of places closing down, and
which is a terrible shame. And it means that there's fewer places for people to to come and give their kids the party experience or the driving experience. And you get some kids that come up to you and say, "Hey, mister, how come your car's so fast?" And you say, "Well, it's because I spent a few hundred hours too much doing slot cars or whatever." And they want to know. Some of them actually want to know, and you can see the light bulb go on. You can see that they've suddenly found something where they can ask somebody who can provide answers, and they can work things out for themselves. And it's wonderful to see it. It really is. You talk to them about, if I just pick up a car now, if you talk to them about the tyres, and you say, it's the grip of the tyres that's helping the car go fast. Or it might be I've got a more powerful motor, or I've got a different gear ratio, or whatever it happens to be, and some of the time they don't really they don't want to hear that. What they want to hear about is I've got a big motor and it now goes fast. That's all they want to hear. But some of them, they go, so you've got grippier tyres, so it goes faster around the corners. And you go, yeah. And they're asking the second level question, and they're getting into it, and you can see that they're beginning to go into it. And I think to myself, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. Because they're not playing on the PlayStation.
No.
They're coming to an environment where they interact with people, they ask questions, they receive information, they can try things. I heard a lovely story from a father who brought his child along for some just for some fun laps. That's all it was.
Laps, yeah.
And they live about an hour south of Sydney. And the father said to me, you know what, he doesn't normally, the child doesn't normally spend a lot of time talking to me because he's got, his own stuff going on and what have you. But for the hour that we were in the car, he was telling me all the things he was going to do when we got to the slot car shop. I'm gonna do this lap time, I'm going to do that, I'm going to put different tyres on. And it was something for them to talk about, and it was something for them to bond and engage over. And as I was talking to the father, you could see that he was really happy that his child was coming out of his shell. It was something to talk about. So,
and there was an obvious interest in all that, and that's where you get exposed, and you find future engineers or whatever, because they're exposed to this, and their inquisitive minds will go with it.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to pretend that it should be a curriculum event within the education system. But there's I don't know anything about the education curriculum, but there's a science and technology thread.
There certainly is
that needs to be there. And sometimes you need something that's relatable. It's all very well talking about the atomic weight of lead or whatever, or the chemical reactions, but if it's not real for people, if they
not
can't
tangible, you can actually hold it, and it's not a theory thing. It's actual.
So if you have something that can actually be, that can be relatable and something you can engage with, but still keeping that thread of science and technology and engineering, and keeping that thread going through that. Why not? Maybe slot cars could be one way of doing that, with some very practical,
without losing the fun factor.
Yeah.
Which
well,
is
Skillex Street's got this